They had a target to hurt Sophie. She was targeted by this team for a reason. For a reason. They wanted to hurt Sophie. They made it their business to hurt Sophie. And that's exactly what they did, was hurt Sophie. And
right here, we got Sophie's sister Lindsay and her mom Paula. At WNBA, maybe you should focus less on fining players for commenting on your poor officiating and more about hiring officials that are able to call a consistent game, protect your athletes. Pathetic. Praying for you, Sophie Cunningham. Yeah.
Sophie Cunningham does call out the officiating on her podcast a few times and has been fined every time she does. So I think that her sister is just taking a stance for Sophie Cunningham because, again, this injury could be very significant for the Fever. This could be very significant for Sophie Cunningham. And the officiating was just kind of crazy in this game. The Fever...
I love Paige to death. Do not get me wrong. I think, I think she's a hell of a player and, would love to play with her one day. But those refs were giving her every freaking whistle last night. You literally couldn't touch her. Couldn't touch her. And that...
What happens when a player calls out referees for failing to protect athletes, only to suffer a devastating injury just days later? Yesterday's game between the Indiana Fever and Connecticut Sun turned into a nightmare scenario that perfectly illustrates everything wrong with WNBA officiating today. Sophie Cunningham went down hard in the first half after what appeared to be a reckless play by Connecticut's Bria Hartley. The sight was gut-wrenching, Indiana's toughest defender clutching her right knee, tears streaming down her face as she struggled to put any weight on her leg. For a player who's built her entire identity around being physically tough and never backing down, seeing her immediately collapse in visible agony told you everything about how serious this injury was. But here's what makes this situation absolutely infuriating. Just days before this game, Cunningham had publicly criticized WNBA referees for their poor officiating and failure to adequately protect players from dangerous plays. Her comments weren't just random complaints. They were prophetic warnings about exactly what would happen if the league continued allowing overly physical, borderline dirty play to go unpunished.
More time here. Bria Hartley going to her left, dribbling to the baseline, skip passing across the lane, but with that, she gets kind of tangled up. She falls down, she falls straight into Sophie's leg, and then Sophie grabs her shin area. Now, she was on the ground, she was crying, she was yelling. It definitely seemed like she was in a ton of pain. The training staff went over to her, they went to commercial break. It was a real injury. This wasn't something, and Sophie's the type of player, a lot of times when she does get injured, she just gets right back up, she tries to walk it off. This was something that kept her down, and it was so hard to see. It is ironic because Bria Hartley has been in multiple scuffles this year with the Connecticut Sun. A lot of people would categorize her as a dirty player.
The irony is devastating. A player speaks out about player safety concerns, gets targeted by officials who seem more interested in controlling narratives than protecting athletes, then suffers a potentially season-ending injury that could have been prevented with proper officiating. This isn't coincidence. It's a systematic failure that's been building all season long. Let's talk about who was involved in this play. Bria Hartley has developed quite a reputation this season for reckless, aggressive behavior that crosses the line between competitive basketball and dangerous conduct. This is the same player who pulled Angel Reese down by her ponytail in a previous game and has been involved in multiple confrontations throughout the year. Yet somehow, she continues playing without facing meaningful consequences for her actions. When Hartley drove baseline and crashed directly into Cunningham's planted leg, it wasn't just an unfortunate accident. It was the inevitable result of allowing a culture where players know they can get away with rugby tactics without facing real punishment. The impact was violent enough to immediately sideline one of the league's most durable players. And anyone watching could see this was completely avoidable.
Right here, this is some video, of course, of her. Let me just turn this down. Limping off the court yesterday. The good thing is she did walk off the court, folks. You gotta say she did walk off. Now look, you can tell Bria Hartley, in my opinion, she launched herself into her knee. This is Bria Hartley right here, grinning from ear to ear, with Sophie Cunningham smiling. I mean, that's despicable, folks. There's no other way to look at it.
What makes this injury even more tragic is understanding how important Cunningham has become to the Fever organization. Since Caitlin Clark's extended absence due to injury, Sophie has been the emotional heart of this team. She's averaged over 12 points per game while shooting better than 50% from three-point range. But more importantly, she's provided the kind of defensive intensity and leadership that championship teams require. She's been the one player willing to stand up for her teammates when opponents try intimidation tactics. Her competitive fire transformed Indiana's identity from soft to scrappy, and her veteran presence has been invaluable during a season filled with adversity. Losing that leadership, even temporarily, creates a void that extends far beyond statistics. The referees in yesterday's game had already established a pattern of letting Connecticut get away with overly physical play before the injury occurred. Multiple cheap shots and questionable contact went uncalled in the first quarter, including a play where Cunningham was knocked to the floor while dribbling 75 feet from the basket without any whistle. When you create an environment where players understand they won't face consequences for dangerous behavior, someone inevitably gets hurt.
Sophie has picked up 2 injuries this regular season. Both have been against the Connecticut Sun. Both have been against this team. So this team has blown out Sophie Cunningham's ankle and blown out her knee. She has played the Connecticut Sun 3 times.
Sophie's family members took to social media after the injury, with her sister posting a scathing critique of WNBA officiating. She called out the league for focusing more on finding players who criticize poor officiating than actually hiring competent referees who can protect athletes. Her mother described Hartley as a disgruntled player who plays out of control and causes problems wherever she goes. These weren't just emotional reactions. They were accurate assessments of systemic problems. But here's where this story takes an incredible turn. Despite losing their emotional leader and falling behind by 21 points, the Indiana Fever somehow pulled off the largest comeback in franchise history. What seemed like a devastating defeat became one of the most inspiring victories in recent basketball memory. Kelsey Mitchell absolutely exploded in the second half, scoring 34 points after managing just 4 in the first half. Her final stat line was otherworldly: 38 points on 11 of 22 shooting, 5 of 8 from three-point range, and 11 of 12 from the free throw line. She didn't just score points, she completely took control of every aspect of the game when her team needed a miracle. The supporting cast stepped up remarkably around Mitchell's heroic performance. Odyssey Sims, playing her first star after being signed to a hardship contract, contributed 19 points and 7 assists with veteran poise. Aaliyah Boston recorded her most complete performance of the season with 14 points, 13 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks. Even role players like Lexi Hull delivered clutch shots when the pressure was highest. This comeback represented more than just one regular season victory. It demonstrated the kind of character and resilience that separates good teams from championship contenders. When faced with their worst possible scenario, losing their emotional leader to a preventable injury while falling behind by 3 touchdowns, they found a way to dig deeper and achieve something magical. The victory improved Indiana's playoff positioning significantly, putting them 2.5 games ahead of 9th place with just 9 games remaining. More importantly, it proved they can overcome any obstacle when they play with proper heart and determination. That confidence could be invaluable heading into the season's final stretch. However, the uncertainty surrounding Cunningham's injury status remains a major concern. She's scheduled for an MRI to determine the extent of damage to her right knee, and the initial signs aren't encouraging. The visible pain and inability to bear weight suggests this could be a significant injury that keeps her sidelined for an extended period. This situation perfectly encapsulates everything wrong with WNBA officiating and player safety protocols. When athletes feel compelled to publicly criticize referees for failing to protect them, and then suffer serious injuries just days later in plays that could have been prevented with proper officiating. The league has a systemic problem that needs immediate attention. The broader implications extend beyond just one injury or one team. When key players go down with preventable injuries caused by reckless opponents, it damages the entire product that fans are paying to support. The financial investments teams make in building competitive rosters get undermined by poor officiating that allows dangerous play to flourish.
Sophie did not deserve any of that happened to her today, and it is very, very unfortunate, man. I mean, immediately in the game, the refs was just on some ish, bro. Just
what happened to Sophie Cunningham yesterday was a preventable tragedy that illustrates the urgent need for WNBA leadership to prioritize player safety over everything else until the league starts taking these concerns seriously and holding dangerous players accountable for their actions. We'll continue seeing talented athletes have their careers jeopardized by opponents who play like they're in a demolition derby rather than a basketball game. The incredible comeback victory showed what's possible when players refuse to give up despite facing impossible odds. But it shouldn't take heroic efforts to overcome the consequences of poor officiating and preventable injuries that never should have happened in the first place.